Hi everyone, welcome to another My Life in Objects. So this one is going to be a bit of a rambly chat around the sort of intersection of 2000 AD, the character Judge Dredd, Dredd the movie. I'll talk a little bit about the earlier Judge Dredd movie with Sylvester Stallone, and then also Alex Garland. And various places in between. So I think probably I'll start off with 2000 AD because this is probably where the journey started. So when in my sort of, I think it must have been my early to mid-teens, my two younger brothers used to get each a comic stroke, what would I suppose over time would have morphed into what we now call, graphic novels. And one of them used to get a sort of slightly comedic one called Bananas. And the other one used to get 2000 AD. So I was more interested in reading the 2000 AD one than I was the Bananas one. And it was through the 2000 AD that I was introduced to Judge Dredd. And then sort of fast forward beyond, the Judge Dredd movie with Sylvester Stallone and various other things. Sometime, I think it must have been in the 2000s, into the 2010s, I suppose. I'm not sure exactly when I bought this, which is a nice compendium of all the Judge Dredd stuff from the first few issues of 2000 AD. So just brought together. And what was interesting is, and I don't know if anybody has the same memory, I know I've heard someone else mention this about Judge Dredd, but the one that really sticks in my head, and I think when my brother started having the comics, which they were back then, they would have been delivered through the local news agents, I suppose. But back then, and I don't know if it's still the case now, actually I haven't bought a new issue of anything in ages, but used to get these little gifts in the early ones. And I think by the time they were subscribed to it, they'd sort of missed the free gifts, if there were indeed any. But what I do remember, and looking at this, there's certain, stories which I have a sort of distant memory of, but there is one in particular that's quite deep into the book, which always sticks in my mind, and it's this one. This is War. I can't remember the exact title of this. I don't know if it was called Block War or something along those lines. But the premise was, and it says down the bottom here, I think is instead of, as you probably know, wars today are no longer fought between vast armies, but by combat units consisting of 4 soldiers and 1 reserve. So when one side has been wiped out, the other side wins. They are then entitled to claim territory from the losing nation. Of course, this is all screened on TV. But this is the one that sort of sticks in my head, and the fact they were sort of using weapons which went through the suits, but if you ran fast enough, they went straight through you, and sort of the blast, if you like, occurred on the other side. So I thought that was a neat concept in the storyline. And then I always remember this as a follow-up where you've got these bank robbers that are Laurel and Hardy, and then they can assume different famous personas as well, which I thought was pretty cool. Now I'm not sure if any of these I haven't been through this sort of systematically. It was just one of the things I purchased for sort of nostalgic reasons. So I, take it down occasionally and flick through. And I'm trying to remember at this point in the run whether they got to the point of the things like Judge Death, that sort of thing, that storyline. I don't know if they had, but anyway, these are. I mean, I'm assuming you can still get these. And I was tempted to sort of buy a series of these, but because it's not something I pick up that often, and it's nice just to dip into occasion. I just really bought the first one in the series, so that really worked for me in terms of sort of scratching that nostalgic itch. And then sometime after I bought this, a lot later after the film actually came up, I picked up this. I'd been meaning to watch it for a while, and so when I did finally pick it up, I think the DVD was pretty cheap. And what was nice about it is it reintroduced me to Alex Garland, because prior to that I had seen the Danny Boyle directed film Sunshine way back, pretty much when it came out, which is a really good film if you've never checked it out. And for that, Alex Garland did the screenplay. And then as a result of watching this, I started going on a bit of an Alex Garland sort of deep dive. And what I'll do is in the description, I will include some interesting podcast interviews, because he's really interesting, just listening to him talk, actually, listening to Alex Garland talk. And of course, he's been involved with other things like 28 Days Later, and then more recently 28 Years Later, and various other films along the way, like Ex Machina, which I watched on probably on Netflix, something like that. Was it Warfare, I think, is another one, and Civil War. But yeah, I just became, after watching this, I'm becoming sort of reacquainted with him. Really, since then, over a number of years, because I did buy this quite a few years ago, even though it wasn't when it came out. It made me want to explore his sort of his universe and the different philosophical things that come up. But then that leads me into another interesting thing, which I think I've told before, is prior to this film, I had actually seen the Sylvester Stallone Judge Dredd when it was released on, I think, video back in the day, when we still had video cassettes over DVDs or VHS. And I may have told this story before, and I'll just recount it quickly here, because whenever I see Judge Dredd, it always makes me chuckle when I think about this. So I used to work on an EPOS, electronic point of sale helpline, back in the day at a place called Radio Rentals, and we worked out of an accounts office there. And what we used to do on a Saturday, we were the only ones there. We used to come in and do till support on a Saturday, because the shops were open on a Saturday, but the rest of the accounts office didn't need to be there. A lot of their stuff wasn't in real time. It was sort of post-contract paperwork, pretty much. But we used to have to come in case they had a problem with the tills, and people had problems processing stuff and those sort of things. So we're sitting there taking the odd call, and it never that busy. So what we used to do is, we'd come in, have a chat, and then one day the team leader said, "Oh, we should watch a movie," because there was a TV in the meeting room that we were adjacent to. So we got the TV out, and the previous week, when I hadn't worked, but I'd gone in there to just hang out, because it was actually one of my, it is the most favourite place I've ever worked at, actually. It was great there. And I used to go in, even when I was working on a Saturday, but I was shopping, I'd sometimes pop in during my shop and just say hi to everybody and just hang out for a while. And the previous week they'd been watching, I think it was one of the rock festivals in the UK. It's on top of my tongue. Glastonbury, and they had the TV aerial hanging out the window. They'd managed to find one, and then that following week when I was in, the team leader said, "Oh, have you seen the Judge Dredd film yet? And I said, no. He said, well, we'll have a whip round. And I think there were 4 of us there, and it was like $4 or £4, or I can't remember how much. Maybe it was £2 for to rent a video. And we went out into town and rented this video, and we watched it while we were taking calls with the TV out in the main in the call centre area where we were situated. And halfway through, the boss of the place, the person that was in charge, the office manager, came in for some other reason and didn't say anything about the fact we were watching this. They just completely sort of blanked it. I don't know why they didn't say anything. But then I think it was a few days later, when everybody was back in the office on the Monday, we got this sort of internal message went around. This was before the days of email. So it was just a sort of verbal thing. And that was a letter, actually, I think, to everybody saying, could we please remind staff not to use company property during off or yeah, anyway, it was really weird, wordly, and it was quite good how they had managed it, because we never did it again, but they didn't specifically name and shame anybody. They just said, oh, we'd like to, remind everybody not to, I think it was not to misuse company property. And everybody was sort of a bit confused about what that actually meant, and no one really realised what we'd been up to, I don't think, and it was never mentioned again, and we never did it again. But every time I see Dredd, it just reminds me of that. Very pleasant Saturday taking calls while watching the old Judge Dredd film. I enjoy this more, but I didn't particularly mind the original one, and there's some pretty cool bits in it. Some bits in it that aren't so good in the sort of Sylvester Stallone one. But yeah, there's something about this one. It just, to me, it just captures the apocalyptic, what's the dystopian nature of of the environment very well. So I was trying to think, because at the time when that original Judge Dredd came out, there was another film that came out, and they just seemed very similar. A lot of sci-fi films that came out at that time, to me, around the time of Sylvester Stallone, Judge Dredd, were pretty had a certain look and feel to them. I'm trying to think now. Yes, I always get, sometimes in my mind, I think I always get the Judge Dredd film and Demolition Man a little bit muddled up for whatever reason. Anyway, there we go. So what I'll do is I will include some links to some Alex Garland stuff, because some really interesting interviews with him where he goes through various sort of screenplays and films he's directed. So I'll track those down, put them in the description, and you can have a listen through if you're a big Alex Garland fan. So thanks once again for watching. Bye for now, and I will catch you in a future video.